Welcome back to the Bryan Devore Connection. I'm your host, Bryan Devore, bringing cheer to home care. Well, that's a great thing to do, and that's why it's in their name. So here to talk about cheer home care, is Brooke Martindale, who is the owner and founder of Cheer Home Care, and Gabrielle Pumpian, who I've known for several years, and I'm glad that you're back today to talk about Cheer Home Care.
Thanks for having us, Bryan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bryan. We're really excited to be here.
Good, my pleasure. So, Brooke, you came up with this idea and this name. Tell us how it all started.
Well, I had a home care company for over 10 years in Boston, and when I moved here, I met Gabby, and I got so excited because I thought, oh, I can do this again. But I was listening actually to a Mel Robbins podcast, and she said, what is it you want to do, and what's the reason behind it? And as you know, finding a domain can be really challenging in this world. So I just, in the back of my head, kept going, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And it became very clear, if I was going to be doing this again, and some people think you're crazy to own a company that operates 24/7 around the clock, I really wanted to make sure that I knew why I was doing it. And it became very clear. I wanted to bring cheer and joy to my clients' lives, to my office staff, the things and the people we work with and the conditions. Life isn't fair, and it can be, depending on how you approach it, there's different feelings and moods of the office. And I wanted to make sure that when we were in the office, we were providing cheer and joy to each other. And for our caregivers, they do very, very challenging work, and they often are not appreciated at the level they deserve to be appreciated. So I wanted to make sure that any way that we could, we brought it. And believe it or not, Cheer Home Care domain existed, and we were lucky enough to get it. And I think it really just resonates with our team. It's been so accepted in the community. Everyone we meet, I love it. It's a different approach, and it's what it should be.
Yeah.
Getting assistance does not, or caregiving does not mean doom, gloom. It can mean that your quality of life, even we're bringing independence, not dependence, because you're able to do a lot of things that you couldn't do before. So we've had a very, been able to move in a very positive direction with it.
No, I love that. And we'll talk more about the services you provide in just a moment. Gabby, what attracted you to Cheer Home Care? I mean, obviously it sounds like the culture that Brooke has created is really starting to permeate, and then you come along.
Yeah, well, I've been in the home care space for over a decade here in San Diego, and I've always worked for companies that have a corporate entity behind it. So I do think that when I met Brooke, I felt like her approach was really new and exciting, and also brought back the services to the local level. I think that home care is such a personal choice. The people you hire to provide the service as caregivers should be local people, and you need to really take care of them, like she said. So by creating Cheer, we're creating a hyper-local service for our clients, and we're also creating upward mobility and great employment options for our staff. But mostly, Brooke and I aligned on the philosophy of home care. We feel like each case and each client is very nuanced and needs to be approached as an individual. There's not one blanket solution for people who are aging, and we need to be flexible and cater to exactly what they're looking for and to be able to meet their expectations.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And that transitions perfectly to what we're going to talk about next with Brooke. You've created sort of an interesting service line, different types of service that you provide for seniors and their loved ones and others too. Talk about that.
So as I mentioned, I had a company before, and we work a lot with care managers, life care advocates, geriatric care managers, depending on the term. And again, they were coming to me and saying, my clients can afford to pay more, and really what they want is caregivers that are like their children, their grandchildren. And and they said, if you can get those caregivers, they will pay for them. And I just, I paused and I thought about it. And what we ended up creating was different tiers of caregivers. And it's not to say everyone needs them, everyone wants them, but we have what we call executive level caregivers, and it's college educated caregivers. And I think the biggest thing is there's a lot of shared life experiences between our clients and our caregivers. They're able to step in at more of a higher executive level. They're able to document things to a greater level. We had one client who was in the ICU and the family couldn't be with them, and they just wanted the medical care was terrific there, but what they wanted was someone else that could be updating them moment by moment, making sure the things that they wanted were happening. And that worked really well. Other times you might have a CEO who's at a meeting, and because of his Parkinson's, he can't always count that his legs are going to be there. And he wants to know that someone can step in that might be more like an executive assistant to come in and help him if he needs it. And that's where it's really worked. It happens to be our CEOs, former professors, people in the medical industry that want this level of care and can afford it. So we have those caregivers. And then we also have what we call college companions. And those caregivers are perfect for people who could use a little extra companionship, have more like a daughter, a son for a day, and they're just maybe a little lonely and they want someone to shop with them. They want someone to help sort their mail. Maybe their eyes aren't what they used to be. And those caregivers can come in and do those services. They're in college or maybe they've graduated college. And then we have our traditional caregivers who are wonderful. They're who you think of. They do the personal care, companionship care, the IADLs and ADLs, bathing, toileting, transferring. And like the executive level caregivers can do that as well. It's the college companions in the middle that can't do that. But we've found just people love it. They come to us, and you don't need it all the time. Depending on the client's sleeping at night. So our traditional caregivers are great. And even at that level, we go above and beyond. They're having to do reading comprehension. They are doing writing samples. We hire 1% to 2% of our traditional caregivers that apply. So we are incredibly selective on who we employ. And, that's quite a challenge in an industry where there aren't enough people to hire in the first place. But we really pride ourselves on the quality of care and the individuals that we hire. And we also want to be able to promote our traditional caregivers. So some of our traditional caregivers, they are just so amazing, so bright. If you want to call it the lottery room of who they were born to, that they, didn't have parents that could, or they couldn't afford an education. And you want them over any other caregiver that can come into the home. And we give those caregivers, and I tell the hire clients, you're paying for a college-educated caregiver, but this caregiver I would put into my home ahead of any other caregiver on our roster. And if you don't like them, they won't come back. But if you like them, and pretty sure you will, they deserve to be paid more because the level of care they can provide is above and beyond. And that's really terrific in an industry that, although we pay significantly above minimum wage, we all know even a good amount above minimum wage is incredibly hard to live off of. So it really enables our caregivers to have a higher quality of life doing something that they love, which again, this industry needs to get very creative as there's a caregiver shortage. And the baby boomer generation is where it is right now.
No, absolutely. I love the fact that you offer the different levels of care because you're really meeting people where they are and what they need.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to add, and after being in sales for so long with home care, there are clients and referral sources that want options, and I think we're going to see that even more with the baby boomer generation. And so our model gives clients options, and it gives caregivers options too, who you may not think would apply to become a caregiver because they have a bachelor's degree in biochemistry, but they're actually interested in doing this type of work and working with the older adult population. So it's exactly that. It's meeting people where they're at from a customer standpoint, and it's giving upward mobility options for employment to fill this gap in need of care staff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, Gabby, you and I, we kind of run in the same circles in a lot of cases.
We do.
With the Aging Life Care Association and others. You're really good at collaborating with other professionals to really bring resources to your clients and vice versa. Talk about some of that.
Yeah, so because we're not really a Medi-Cal program, we don't serve people who have a limited budget. We're looking to work with clients who have long-term care insurance, who have the means to be able to provide our services in their home long-term. And so my community support really is reaching out to people who are in the legal financial place, so estate planning attorneys and financial planners who need solutions for their clients who come to them to say, my spouse just was diagnosed with dementia. I promised her I'd never move her into a community. What do I do? So I want to make sure that those legal financial people in the industry here have our contact information. We work with concierge physicians. We're finding that a lot of patients want their doctors at the ready and available to them, so they decide to go with a concierge group versus just a large internal medicine group. And those doctors are actually paying attention to the non-medical needs of their patients. And that's where we come into play as a great resource, again, to keep them independent and at home. And then we work with high-end senior living communities. I think it's sometimes a misconception that when someone moves into an assisted or an independent living that they're going to get everything that they need. But if they have an event or if they have a diagnosis like Parkinson's, that condition is going to escalate at some point, and they may not want to move. They may want to just bring in more support in. And so we partner with senior living communities, mostly those that are continuing care, retirement communities, kind of the higher end, in order to provide really good care. And then the compliance piece is important to some of those accounts. So our internal team is able to ensure that our caregivers are fully compliant. Brooke ensures our business is compliant with our liability coverage and our workers' comp coverage. And so people feel secure by referring to us and allowing our staff to support them.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's a variety of care, like I said, meeting people where they are, wherever they are, whether it's home or what have you. Brooke, any other services that we didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about?
I think we really touched on the quality and the different level of caregivers. One thing that we also do that we've spoken a little bit about just really being proactive. And I think in this industry, it is so helpful because we all know one fall and how much it can impact someone's life. So we also take technology very seriously. So our caregivers write detailed care notes every single shift. It's not in a binder in the home that never gets checked. Our care managers are reading those notes daily. So if we have a really nice woman who in her 90s, suddenly a different caregiver goes in the next day and the caregiver says, this client was maybe a little more verbally aggressive than what you described to me, they're letting us know or they're writing it. So we're not medical professionals, but when you work in this industry, someone who's really kind, who doesn't become, who one day, the next day is not, or someone who suddenly is getting up many times in the middle of the night, we know they might have a urinary tract infection. So although we're not diagnosing it, we're reaching out to the concierge doctors, we're reaching out to the care managers that we're working with, we're notifying the correct families, and we're catching those things. So before she has a fall that suddenly impacts her life or has to have her change where she's living or things along those lines. So that's really been a big changer for us that not many companies do. And then we also have caregiver profiles. So we have a lot of children live all over the world. And they're trying to convince their parents, who sometimes are reluctant to receiving care. And we can send a picture of the caregiver, why she became a caregiver, her certifications, and they can read and say, Mom, this caregiver loves photography. You loved photography. Why don't you do photography together? Or Dad, he had his degree even in another country in economics. You love it and thrive on it. This is someone you can talk about these things with. So it gives the ability to make a little bit of a connection. Not to mention when a stranger's coming to your door, you don't know who you're opening the door to. And I think you're already a little anxious when a stranger comes to the door. So it's really nice for them to be able to see a little bit about them, to get a picture, to have some more information. Makes a big difference. Is there anything else that you can think of?
No, I think the other piece is we want to be a part of the community. So we have an office that's on La Jolla Boulevard in the community of Bird Rock. Our door is open. It's on your way to go getting coffee or a taco in that community. And so we are trying to come up with ways to engage the public. Starting this month, we're going to be offering a free educational seminar. This month's topic is how to use my long-term care insurance. And we have Linda Yonke, who's been featured on your program, coming in and doing just that, educating the community on so that when they're ready, they know what to do. So we are finding ways to engage not only in our local Bird Rock La Jolla community, but also providing more education to the greater public. Because as we know, there's 10,000 people turning 65 every day, yep. And people don't want to be caught without this information so that they can be proactive as well in their decision making.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
To learn more about Sheer Home Care and all the services they provide, their information's on screen, phone number and website. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast channel, obviously you can't see it, but it's in the caption as well. So Brooke and Gabby, thank you so much for coming
Thank
today
you, Brian.
and bringing the cheer back to home care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.